Moving from a Judeo-Christian hegemony to a heterosexual, heteronormative hegemony, we have a lecture by Benjamin Ale-Ebrahim, who is a Ph.D. candidate in sociocultural anthropology at Indiana University at Bloomington. He has a BA in anthropology and an MA in religious studies from the University of Kansas. And his research focuses on intersections of Islam, gender, sexuality, new media technologies, and is currently writing a dissertation on the internet and social media's impact on the way in which gender is performed and received and represented, especially in popular media. His title of his paper is A Space to Express Yourself, Akaliyat magazine and the creation of queer community in Morocco. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a PowerPoint. Okay, we're gonna get that pulled up. I'm gonna actually come down and stand. That'll be a bit more comfortable for me. I broke my arm a few weeks ago. That's why I'm in a little cast right now, recovering. So if you see me move my arm, just trying to keep it comfortable. So I'll start by saying that this paper emerged as a paper written for a class in performance studies at Indiana University, and sort of the beginnings of my research into these topics in Morocco. And I will be returning to Morocco this summer to do pre-dissertation research, and I look forward to hearing any comments, questions, any feedback that you might have for me. So please let me know if there's anything you want to talk more about. I won't have time to talk about all the details that I present in the paper. I did write a full paper. I'm just going to talk of it informally now so we can just get the highlights. How does this work?
I think you push the bottom.
Okay. All right, so let me start by talking about some of the background surrounding LGBTQ issues in Morocco. So in the title of my paper, I use the term queer, and this term I am using to refer to anyone who identifies with any identity outside of straight or heterosexual. So this is lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, all of that. This is sort of an umbrella term that I'm using here. Okay, so many of you might know that Article 489 of the Moroccan Criminal Code criminalizes, quote, lewd or unnatural acts with an individual of the same sex. So essentially criminalizing homosexuality in Morocco. Same-sex sexual activity is illegal and can be punished with anything between 6 months to 3 years in prison and a fine of 120 to 1,200 dirhams. This law is somewhat infrequently enforced. Some of the factors that go into determining whether the law will be enforced include mediatization. So for example, in 2016, there was a pretty high-profile case of 2 young women in Marrakesh. A photo was taken of them kissing each other on a rooftop in Marrakesh, and this photo was published on social media and spread fairly widely on social media in Morocco. The photo made its way back to one of the young women's family members, and this family member called the authorities and asked them to investigate the case. The young women were arrested, and this provoked a pretty big deal, a lot of feedback, backlash around the world, and there was a social media campaign to free the girls from prison. There was a hashtag, Free the Girls, and this campaign ended up being successful, and they were eventually released from prison. So something like this, where proof of same-sex activity is undeniable, this is a case where this law would be actually enforced, to give one example. All right, so that's sort of the background surrounding LGBTQ issues in the country. I'm talking in particular about one group, Association Akaliyat. Akaliyat means minorities, as you all know, in Arabic. We'll talk more about that framing in a minute. And it was founded as a magazine published online in 2015. To date, they've published 5 issues. They're only available online in digital PDF format. You can go to their website and download them. And what they do is they advocate for LGBTQ rights and the rights of religious minorities. So this is their framing. This is who they're reaching out to, their audiences. Queer people and religious minorities. Here, religious minorities means primarily Moroccans who have converted to Christianity, Moroccans who are atheists or who are secular. This is who they see as religious minorities. All right, so my research questions. I'm looking at this magazine and Akaliyat as an organization in general, and I'm asking how do they address these audiences? How do they think about these audiences? I'm drawing on the work of Karen Barber here, who's an anthropologist of media in Africa, and she talks about how media products actually don't speak to preformed audiences. They work to actually create and shape audiences, right? So this is something I'm looking into with Akaliyat magazine. How does it work to create a queer community in Morocco? The second research question is, what type of subjects does Akaliyat imagine its readers to be? Here I'm working with another anthropologist, linguistic anthropologist, Laura Kunreuther, who did a study of radio in Nepal and the ways in which people talk about themselves as subjects, right? How do they speak about their identities and their selves? And she's thinking about the influence of neoliberalism, right? People begin to learn how to speak about themselves as neoliberal subjects. So here I'm wanting to look at how Akaliyat is teaching its readers to think about themselves as minorities, as sexual and religious minorities. All right, so my main argument is that Akaliyat invites its readers to think of themselves as a community of listeners who are affectively invested in each other's stories, right? They have an emotional connection to each other and to the magazine and the organization itself. And this is what brings a Moroccan queer community into being, this mode of address. Okay. So Akaliyat is not the only organization doing this work in Morocco. So two other examples here. On the right, you see an image that was posted on Facebook, the Facebook page of Aswat, Voices in Arabic. And this image was shared on the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia last year. And for those of you who read Arabic, you know that it says, I am not an abomination, shadh, or luti or sehaqiya. These are derogatory terms used to refer to LGBTQ people in Arabic. Ana mithli, ana mithliya, right? This is the term that they want people to use, homosexual, right? As a non-derogatory term, right? So this is the type of campaign that we see on social media, trying to change the way that people are using language to refer to queer people. On the left, you see another example. This is from a different organization called Mali. Mali is primarily a feminist organization, but they also do work related to LGBTQ issues in Morocco. And this was shared on the same day on their social media accounts. And as you can see, it says, no to Article 489, the article of the criminal code that prohibits homosexuality. Homophobia is the crime, not homosexuality, right? So reframing the issue here. Okay, so two other examples of different organizations doing similar work. So how does Akaliyat stand out? What does it do that is unique? Okay, so this is the first issue of the magazine that was published in January of 2015. You can see that it's all in Arabic, right? There is no French, there is no English, there is no Spanish, there's no Amazigh. It's all in Arabic, both Modern Standard Arabic and Darija. So their goal is to be locally facing, right? They want to reach as broad of a Moroccan audience as possible. Okay, and the person who appears on the cover here is a feminist activist associated with Mali, the organization that we just saw. And I'm going to talk for a minute about an interview that they conducted with her in this first issue. Okay, so let's look at a part of that interview. And this is my translation from the Arabic. So the question that the editor poses is the following. Whenever we talk about minorities and their rights in Morocco, we come up against a great deal of ignorance about the subject and confusion in understanding. Our Arab society specifically singles out sexual and religious minorities, Akaliyat Jinsiya wa Diniya, for persecution. what is your comment on this proposal, if I'm correct in saying so? Okay, so he's asking her to comment on this framing of queer people, atheists, converts to Christianity as minorities. And her response is this. So she's saying, I use the word minorities with caution because there are no statistics that we can use to determine the majority or the minority. Freedom of expression does not exist in Morocco. That would allow each person to express their religious beliefs or sexual orientation in order for us to have access to these numbers. I also use the term our Arab society with caution because we do not live in an Arab society, but rather a mix between many different cultures, and the use of this term Arab shows persecution. That's not the persecution that sexual and religious quote-unquote minorities suffer from, but rather the cultural persecution and marginalization that the Amazigh have suffered, for example. So what she's doing here, as you can see, is asking Akaliyat's readers to think of themselves not as isolated individuals, marginalized by society, but as minorities who have natural allies in groups like the Amazigh, feminist organizations, right? Other groups arguing for greater individual rights, greater civil rights for marginalized groups, right? So taking a positive spin on things, right? We're not oppressed minorities. We're a group of fellow minorities that actually form the majority of Moroccan society. So this is a really interesting framing that we see here. Okay, how are we doing on time?
You have about 4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. So let me talk briefly about this. So this is from issue 3. This is an interview conducted with a closeted gay police officer in Morocco. So unlike the one we saw previously, here the interview is completely anonymous. There is no name, there is no photograph of the person. The police officer did not wish to be identified, but at the end of the interview, we see him saying this. He says, I wish all homosexuals, mitliyin, using the non-derogatory term, a happy and normal life, just like anyone else. And I also hope that there will come a day when society will change its opinion of homosexuality. I think this will happen through the work of your magazine and the rest of the free media outlets that are trying to improve the situation of homosexuals in our Arab nations. I also hope that your magazine continues to exist because it shines a light on an anxious class of people that, if the magazine didn't exist, would face increasing and deepening oppression. Right? So this is, again, thinking about teaching the audience of this magazine to think about themselves as people who are there to hear each other's stories, right? You're not alone, right? And the magazine here serves a really important purpose, right? Asking the readers to be invested emotionally in the success of the magazine. It's one of the only free media outlets that's speaking to the concerns of these oppressed and marginalized people. Okay, so these are some screenshots from the organization's website. For those of you who read Arabic, you can see that it says at the bottom, your opportunity to hear your voice, with over 10,000 viewers per day. Right, so this is where I got the title for my talk. Right, so your opportunity to hear your voice. The magazine is framing itself as a space where people of sexual and religious minorities can speak in public freely, right? One of the only places that exist in Morocco. And here we get some sense for how many people actually engage with the magazine and the organization. Over 10,000 visitors per day to their website. I had a chance to talk to the editor of the magazine when I was in Morocco last summer, and he's told me that the first issue was downloaded over 15,000 times. The second issue was downloaded over 18,000 times. So that gives you some sense for how big the audience is here. Okay, so my conclusions. Akaliyat invites its readers to think of themselves as, quote, sexual and religious minorities with natural allies in other minoritized or marginalized groups like the Amazigh, for example. This framing of your opportunity to hear your voice, this is how they ask their readers to be affectively invested, a community of listeners to each other's stories, right? And I'm arguing that this is how a queer community comes into being through Akaliyat's mode of address. Right, thanks.
Thank you very much.